Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 4 of the new build series. It's been well over a month since my last video, but progress has still been steady. Hopefully everybody is having a good holiday season, and I hope you guys had a good Christmas. So in this episode, we will be changing this whole scene from pure pink foam to something much better. The last episode was mostly about building the new Waller's kit for the industry here and getting it put onto the layout. This time we will be finally getting to some scenery, which I've been looking forward to for a while now. First and foremost, I do want to show off some of the pictures I'm going to be using as my inspiration. It is always better to have an actual reference if you can find one. Like the trucks in this picture is how I know what model semis I needed to buy for this. None of these actually 100% represent what I have on my layout, but it does give me plenty of ideas on the land around it and the details that I can actually add. So I did pick up a couple things from Waller's, like this Woodland Scenics Fine Buff Gravel, which sadly did have a hole in it, so it did kind of get sand everywhere. I also got two of these awesome semi-trucks with the proper trailers for the industry I'm making. These were 15 bucks each, which was a pretty good deal. And lastly, I did pick up a covered hopper. This one is nice because it doesn't actually belong to a certain railroad like the other ones that I bought before. We're going to unbox these really quick to check them out in better detail. You can see they are covered in that sand, but it'll brush off, so it's no big deal. For the price of these, I was super happy with the detail on them. And lastly is the covered hopper. Always love these safety stripes on it. You can always get your money's worth with these Waller's mainline freight cars. So that is my small little haul of stuff I got, but now let's get going on to what this episode is all about. To start off, I will be moving all my freight cars and engines while this area is under construction. The first thing I'm doing is marking down the size of the road I want that goes right through these silos. The roads themselves will be pretty much the same width of the actual kit, which is 5 inches wide. I do the same on the other side, but this time I leave 1 inch between the edge of the layout and the road. It'll be a little bit more than 3 foot long when it's completely done, and that leaves plenty of room for those semi-trucks. Next up is getting some dirt down on the layout. These are most of the things that I'll be using. The dirt is from my backyard, as it always has in the past. I'll be using a pastel to lighten up the color of the dirt, since I have no grout mix on hand. Although the dirt has already been sifted, I'll be doing it one more time with this smaller sifter to get the bigger stuff out. Here's what it looks like after it's been sifted for the second time. So now I'm scraping that little pastel into a powder, which probably isn't the most efficient way, but in this case, it should do just fine. After what seemed like forever, we have a good amount in the cup. Now we mix it all up as well as we can. The first section of dirt will be going here in between these two tracks. And I'm pretty much going to be going up to where that line is. I like to use Mod Podge matte glue mixed with water at a 50-50 ratio. Once it's well shaken up, we're ready to go. I put a decent amount of glue down where I want the dirt, and then I use a brush to spread it out evenly. I do want it pretty close to the tracks because I want the ballast to go over the dirt like how it would be in real life. Here I sort of messed up by pouring the dirt into the sifter over the glue when I should have done it over the orange cup, because some of the dirt will immediately fall through when you pour it into the sifter. The larger pieces that somehow got through will get tossed out. Now to continue covering up that area. Here it is before the final gluing of all the dirt, and what's a video without a curious Banks to see what's going on? To be extra safe, I'll be covering the nearby track with some painter's tape. It's not necessary to do this since you do clean the track later on once you're done, but I thought I might as well just to make things a little bit easier down the line. Isopropyl alcohol is sprayed on pretty heavy at first, so the glue doesn't move anything around or create those little craters. At first I did decide to use the bottle to apply the glue, but it was just going to take too long to cover up the entire area. So I did go with the spray bottle, even though it's a little more messier. At some point I will have to pick up a better quality spray bottle, because this one is just a cheap Dollar Tree one that doesn't really spray that well. Well, it's all glued now, and you might think it's a little bit too much glue, but it'll look completely different when it's dry, and you won't even notice it. Here it is the next day when it's completely dry. I did also add my small little office since it did seem like a good spot. Now I'm going to move the tape here to the other side of the track on the right, since that area will be the next for dirt coverage. I do also put some tape over the main line as well. And now we're just going to repeat that same process we did before. I'm marking down the track since I'm removing it to do the paving process. This piece is just temporary because this is where the new section of layout will be connected. When that time does come, I'll be using Flex Track instead. This is just to make the road process a little bit easier, if that makes sense. I'll be using pop-dot tape to make the roads, and I picked this up at the Dollar Tree. Now to line it up with all the markings we made earlier. The ruler will help make sure that it's completely straight. And same thing for the other side. Now you can see just how big the road is actually going to be. Before I do continue on the roads, I do set up a small fan just to allow the dirt to dry faster. We continue laying down the pop-dot tape on the other side of the silos. This time it is a little bit tougher because the roads are much longer. The road will stop here for now while I do decide where I want it to go and whether or not I want to turn it into a gravel road from this point. Now to add those end pieces of pop-dot tape, because this is going to be where the road ends. It should be a smooth transition from the road to the ramp on the industry. I am also going to be adding some painter's tape to the ramp just so we don't get anything on it. To make my actual roads, I'll be using this patching plaster, which is similar to Woodland Scenic's Smooth It. You can get one of these at Walmart for around $10. Time to slap some of that putty down to get that paving process going. It is just a matter of taking your time and trying to get it evenly spread out. It doesn't take that much because the roads are only a few millimeters tall. This side is complete and now onto the other one. With the longer road, I did find it much easier just to use the ruler to pave it instead. You pretty much just want something that is flat and can actually make it across the whole road. The next day, everything is completely dry. It did take a little while to get everything to a point where I liked it, but the sanding should remove any blemishes or bumps. And of course, all the dirt is now dry as well. Since we're completely done with this, we can remove all the tape, which is always the satisfying part. It is nice to see those perfectly straight lines. We can also remove that blue painter's tape. I also did take the time to scrape away any excess that spilled over the tape. Recently I did try weathering a freight car for the first time. It is a start and now I do know what to use to properly do the job. I ended up using Mod Podge matte finish, but it did come out kind of glossy, which was not the effect I wanted, so since then I have picked up a different matte finish for the future. I was going for a very rusty look, inspired by this photo I found online. Anyways, back to what we were doing. Before I start sanding, I'm going to move everything away just in case there is some kind of residual dust that comes from the process. That includes all this stuff as well. Now the layout is clear and ready for a possible mess. I'll be using 180 grit sandpaper for this job. I know that there are other methods for doing this, like wet sanding with a rag, but I'm just going to stick with my old ways of doing this. I do go slowly so it doesn't kick up so much dust. Vacuuming is done after each round of sanding. Once I am happy with the texture of the road, I like to wipe it down completely just to get all that dust off, and that will help make the painting process much easier. To paint the road, I'll be using this Apple Barrel Matte Country Gray. Painter's tape will go over the ramp again before I start. Then we could get some paint down and we can paint away. They're not completely dry yet at this point, but they already look a lot better. Since it's still wet, it's the best time to remove the painter's tape to avoid any peeling. We are plugging along and I'm liking the way it looks so far. We're getting some good progress done at this point, but there's still plenty to do. The next thing that I'd like to get done is filling in all those missing railroad ties, and that's because we're actually going to be ballasting in this episode. I always kept the ones that I cut off when I was doing the track work for this specific occasion. All I actually do is trim off any excess plastic that sticks up so it slides under the rails much easier. Then I apply a little bit of tacky glue to the bottom of it, and then I slide it under the track. It does look much more complete when you get this done, and I also will eventually paint those solder joints on the side of the rails since that silver does stick out quite a bit. So the next ground cover that I'll be using is this landscaping sand that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. And I will be using the same tools that we use for the dirt. The process is going to be the exact same, so I will be breezing through this so I'm not too repetitive. I cut the corner off the bag so I could pour it onto the glue. I do try my best to keep it all on the layout, but it's not a big deal if some of it falls off. And that is because we do want it all the way up to the edge. Before we do any gluing, I do brush off any sand off spots where I don't want it. And like I said before, the process is the exact same. We start with isopropyl alcohol, and then we glue it. But this time I'm going to be using a bottle, just so we don't get glue all over the place. This section is glued, and now we can move on to the next area. I ended up using both bags of sand to do this job in the end here. The very next thing to get done on the to-do list is going to be ballasting the industry's tracks. I'll be using this Woodland Scenics medium ballast in gray. At this point, all the sand is completely dry, and I really do like the way it looks. It's very close to the prototypes I found online. The roads will need a new full coat of paint because you can easily see where the touch-ups were made previously. I did also add the little hut that was included in the Walters kit, and I did that while the sand was still drying, so it is sort of glued down. All 4 tracks will be ballasted except the main line on the far right. And areas between the tracks with no dirt will be filled with that ballast. I like to use a small cup when I ballast. In this case, it's an empty Mod Podge bottle that's cut in half. This way I can't pour too much on accident. And I just pour it right down the middle of the tracks. During the process, I tidy things up with a brush for the little bits that get out too far. Then I spread out the ballast from the middle with the wide brush. Little by little, you get the ballast where you want it. Tapping the tracks with a brush also helps a lot. Here's a little time lapse of the ballast process. After a good while, it is just about perfect. I try my best to get pretty much all the ballast off the railroad ties. As for the switches, I decided to do them later on and not stress about them now. They're not that hard to do, but you do have to take your time with them so they work properly. The process is pretty similar to what we did with the sand and the dirt. Isopropyl alcohol is sprayed all over to begin with, and the glue is first applied directly down the middle of the tracks, just so it soaks from the inside out. Then I pour it directly down the rails. After that, it's a matter of getting the rest glued. You can easily tell what's been glued already and what hasn't been. So at this point, the other 2 tracks are ballasted and glued, so pretty much now we just wait for it to dry. You can see that the road is a little affected by the alcohol and the glue, but once it's all dry, we will get that last coat of gray down. It's finally all dry, and I'm loving the way this area is taking shape. And we still have a lot to do still. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Since it's all dry, we can now put a final coat of paint on that road. The last thing that I will be doing in this episode is adding some small details to add a little bit more realism to the industry. I do actually only use a few of these items that you see here, but in the next episode I really do plan on detailing this all up much more. First up are my track bumpers, and I actually had these from my last layout. And actually, if I think about it, all these details that I'm about to use are from my past layouts. Each track will get one. You always need a way to stop rolling stock in emergencies, or in some cases, accidents. Next up are some utility poles. These will be 1 foot apart and half an inch away from the road. And they get glued into place. The final detail will be one of these scratch built signs that I made a while back, and it's made of 100% polystyrene. It's going to display the sign in the top right corner. It's the "This company has worked 353 days without a lost time accident" one. The paper sign is carefully cut out, and I pre-drill a hole where I want the sign. Glue is applied to the small piece of copper wire I added to the sign, and that's what will go into the ground. Any excess glue is taken away the best I can, and there it is. It's not much, but the little details do go a long way. And it's just the beginning. Now to put those non-permanent details back on the layout to really make it feel complete. And that is it. This is going to be the progress in today's video. Of course, there is much more to do to make this look a lot better. For example, I do want to put static grass just about everywhere that the dirt is, and add rocks and such. But all that detailing and more will be in the next episode. I hope you guys all have a happy holiday season, and also a good New Year's coming up as well. Thank you all for watching and commenting, it always means a lot. Enjoy some final shots of the layout and the progress that we made. And I will be seeing you guys all in the next episode.